I'm not going back to college to be your friend. I'm going so I can get Uber One for students. It saves you on Uber and Uber Eats. I'm there for $0 delivery fee on cheeseburgers, up to 10% off smoothies, and 6% Uber cash back on rides. Just to be clear, I'm there for savings, not whatever you think college is for.
Get Uber One for students, a membership to save on Uber and Uber Eats. With deals this good, everyone wants to be a student. Join for just $4.99 a month. Savings may vary. Eligibility and member terms apply.
Summer's here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
At the end of the day, whatever your O-line coach can handle and coach, and your players can run, I think an offense can be more successful. If you're all over the map and you're trying to do 1,000 different things, your O-line's just not really good at any of them, you're spread too thin.
In this episode of the Coaching Coordinator Podcast, presented by Vertical Raise, we discuss mid-season coaching strategies with Jason McEndoo, who's the tight ends and fullbacks coach at Oklahoma State. We take a look at the process of defining a team's identity and the importance of adaptability based on player strengths. Coach McEndoo shares his insights on transitioning to a traditional offensive role. We focus on things like effective play calling strategies, prioritizing a well-defined inventory of running plays, and avoiding trendy plays that don't fit the team's strengths. Our presenting partner for this episode is Vertical Raise. They combine a best-in-class technology platform with people who can help your team optimize your fundraising. The link to contact your team Vertical Raise fundraising coach is in the description.
Traveling to see your fave sports team is cool, but traveling with Amex Platinum for the big game is even better.
Right this way.
With access to dedicated card member entrances at select events, you can skip the line. And with access to the Centurion Lounge,
he shoots a three.
You can catch the next game on the way home. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
Welcome to another episode of Coaching Coordinator, the season. Today we focus on some of the things that start to happen mid-season, and this is a time when you're usually coming into your own schematically. You have built your identity of what this team's going to look like. Certainly you have the opportunity to add wrinkles, but you definitely have some things to hang your hat on. And today we're going to focus on that and the idea of do what you do. And joining me to do that is Jason McEndoo, the tight ends and fullbacks coach at Oklahoma State. Coach, great to have you back here again on the podcast.
Hey, Keith, great to be back, man. It's been a few years, but thanks for having me.
You and I were talking before we got going. The last time I had you on, you were the Cowboy backs coach, and you've evolved from being the Cowboy backs, something that was more wide receiver, spread type, finding some of those guys who could be hybrid. But now you guys have some of those true tight end, fullback, punch you in the mouth type of guys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Got the job here in 2015. I had some tight end fullbacks, but then we kind of morphed into a really no-tempo offense. Kind of one of the premier teams, I thought, during that time. And so it just kind of focused on wide receiver guys, more route running and ball skill guys. But then after the 22 season, Coach Gundy said he wanted to go back a different direction. He wanted to go more old school. So he said he wanted some more traditional tight end bodies, long levers, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" guys, handling the dirt. And then wanted the fullbacks to be lined up in the backfield doing fullback things. So we still play tempo and we still flex out and they still have to be able to do all the things. But yeah, we definitely compartmentalize those guys a little bit more and so a little bit more old school. So it's been fun to have those guys back and being able to coach the more traditional kind of guys.
And when we look at everything we do before the season, starting in spring ball, going through summer, fall camp, and even into the early weeks of the season, we're basically proving out a hypothesis of this is who we are. and kind of figuring that out. And obviously it's a very dynamic game. Things move around. Guys are injured. You discover, hey, this is a guy we didn't think about before, but look at how he's developed here over the last several months. So those early weeks in the season, it is about figuring out what is the identity for us. And now as we hit the midseason, we should know those things. We should have a good idea of these are the things we hang our hat on. And the season is always an evolution of all those things that are going to happen. That doesn't mean it stops. But right now, I think we're able to settle in on here's what we do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, who you are in spring ball and going through your summer scripts and even fall camp. I mean, you kind of get a false sense of security sometimes. And like you said, personnel change, a lot of injuries, different things pop up. But then you also sometimes you start trying to do what other people are doing. And I think here at Oklahoma State, what we try to do is just really hone in on what's best for our personnel, what's best conceptually at that time. For example, a couple years ago, we had a guy named Chuba Hubbard, one of the top running backs in the country. He plays for the Panthers now. He was a mid-zone guy. I mean, he'd get him in pistol, let's run mid-zone. That was his gig. He wasn't really an inside zone guy. And then last year, kind of going into it, Ollie Gordon ended up being top running back in the country. First 3 games, we didn't know what we had really. I mean, he only had 25 snaps. He didn't really get the ball that much. And then when he got the ball, he's not an inside zone guy. He's a pistol, downhill, and more of a gap runner. So we got him in the pistol, got him going downhill and some different split flow zones and counters and stuff like that, and really let him go to work. So things like that, just figuring out who your personnel is, adapting to that personnel, and then really sticking with that and really trying to make it work.
When you look at that menu of plays you're carrying, and I've experienced this too, as the season gets going, figuring out, hey, you know what, we're really more of a gap scheme team or really more of an outside zone team, whatever it might be. What's the approach with some of those other things that were in your menu early on or you thought might have been a bigger part of it? Is it continuing to rep those, or is it putting more of your time into some of the things that you see like, hey, these are the best things we're doing here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think you've got to really figure out what your A-list runs are, and then your B-list runs and your C-list runs. There's only so much scripting time. There's only so much practice time. So if you're chasing some rabbit holes and trying to put a round peg in a square hole, I think you waste a lot of rep time versus really honing in on getting your gap schemes or your zones going. I do think you got to complement each other, though. If you're a gap team, I think you got to run power and counter. I mean, they go together. If you're an inside zone team, you got to run mid zone as the counter. As soon as you see them playing downhill, go to the mid zone. As soon as you see them overplaying the counter, come back to the power, or vice versa. You know, like whatever your conceptual runs are, I think you package those runs and then find ways to rep those out of different personnel groups, motion shifts, all those different wrinkles. That's the mid-season part that I think that you really become more successful and just say, hey, look, this is who we are. We're a gap team, but we're going to run different variations of it and get into different personnel groups, your unbalanced, your motions. I mean, there's so much stuff out there now. I mean, just give all the defenses the different looks, but yet still run the same schemes. That's what conceptual. That's what your guys know. And honestly, in my opinion, this is the O-line coach coming out in me. You can only do as much as your offensive line can handle. At the end of the day, whatever your O-line coach can handle and coach, and your players can run, I think an offense is going to be more successful. If you're all over the map and you're trying to do 1,000 different things and your O-line's just not really good at any of them, you're spread too thin. You just got to focus on what those guys can do. Everybody else just got to move in around them, and that's what the smoke and mirrors are: the motions, the shifts, the personnel grouping. I think that's where you can gain an advantage.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think there's a couple things to dig into a little bit more. One, that idea of what is your offensive line coach the best at teaching? What is he most comfortable in? I've had to, as an offensive coordinator, I've had to adjust in seasons. You know, there's been times where I've had a new offensive line coach come in, and I mean, we might have been heavy gap scheme the year before, but he was really more of an inside zone guy. So that kind of became the focus, and the other things became complementary. And I think that's the other thing too that you mentioned there is that idea of complementary plays, that if they are really working, and as we get into midseason, they're scouting us pretty good. They know what our top plays are, and so they're working to stop those. So when they do that, what are the things that are going to open up for you, right? Having that strong understanding of that, how your schemes work together, I think is as important as anything when you're looking at your play menu.
That's exactly right. Instead of just grab bag and go into something completely different concept, I'm going to take pin and pull, for example. I love pin and pull. I think it's an exceptional scheme. But by the time you run your gap scheme, powers and counters, you run inside zones, your mid zones, your split float zones, your read zones, all those different variations, then to me, like pin and pull is a C-list run. But there's so many mechanics. There's so many moving parts on that play, or even toss, bunch toss, for example. There's so many moving parts. It is so hard to rep all those parts into all the different looks and formations. So then, but guys grab to that and say, okay, we're going to do that and we're going to go to that. But unless that's an A-list run for you and you're saying, no, we're running this no matter what, we're going in this game, and your guys know all the different looks and all the different things, 3x1, nub side tight end, 2x2. I mean, there's so many different looks going on. It's just hard. It's a great concept, but just to go grab that one and say, hey, we're going to run this, it's super hard. Not enough time.
Greatness hurts. It's 10,000 hours of hard work, sweat, and setbacks. The aches, the stumbles, the falls. Tylenol provides pain relief for the champion in us all. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and fever reduction. This summer, when greatness hurts, Tylenol will be there with care to help you keep chasing it. That's Tylenol. That's care without limits. Visit Tylenol.com/greatness-hurts to learn more. Use as directed.
This episode is brought to you by Jira. Ever wonder how those big marketing campaigns that make headlines get delivered on time? It all starts with Jira, the only project management tool you need to plan and track work across any team. Every step of that campaign is organised in one place, from launching the campaign all the way back to designing ads and writing creative briefs. Get started on your next big marketing campaign idea today in Jira.
Yeah, I agree. When you look at your A-list, your B-list, your C-list type of runs, your A-list, I would think you want to be able to run against everything. You're going to find a way to utilize those until they're really sold out to stopping it. And you still might be able to run it. When I look at, and again, I think a lot of this is what you said, this goes to how many reps do you have to practice it? When you go to those other things, I think sometimes that you need to limit it and say, when we're going to use this run, it's because they have specifically gone to this one thing to do it. So now when you think of practicing it, you're really only practicing that against a limited amount of looks and knowing that this is when we call it.
I mean, at the end of the day, you got 4 down front, you got 3 down front, right. You got bare, you got hybrid front, you got a 4-3 team playing 3-4 front, you got a 3-4 team playing 4-3 front. I mean, there's so many different looks for the offensive line. And it's just not enough time to do all that. So you gotta, I think you really gotta focus on the concept, focus on the big picture. But then when you are in that niche, when you're in that mid-season groove, right, and you've kind of really discovered or you really focused on who you are, like we were just talking about, you can hit those adjustments. You can say, okay, when they do this, we're doing this. When they're doing that, we're going to do this. I mean, there's the answer. And I think that's right there. Games are won and lost in adjustments that you make. In my opinion, it's not the calls on the call sheet. Because you might come out and you might have practiced with a 4-3 cover 2 team all week, and all of a sudden they come out and they're running 3-4 cover 3. I mean, it's something completely different. And so you better be able to adjust and change and adapt. And that goes for any scheme, but just in general, I think that's where offenses really hit their groove when they understand who they are and can make adjustments within the game.
Definitely. You mentioned the rabbit holes, avoiding those rabbit holes. And you told me before, you hear from Coach Gundy all the time, do what you do, right? We're going to do what we do throughout. Now, the seeing film, you and I were talking before, just with our phones today and on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. I mean, being able to bookmark, I love this play. This is awesome. And we see all those things. That's not what we had before growing up learning the game. You were not exposed to that kind of stuff unless you were watching ball on Saturdays all the time, right? So, coaches, we were never doing that.
And you had a pad and pen and your napkins, you were scribbling stuff.
Yeah. You see it too. I mean, I think of growing up as a coach, again, not having X or anything like it at the time. It was the film you were watching from the previous weeks when you see another team doing something. You're like, wow, these guys are really gashing them with that. And I've done it. We've gone down those rabbit holes. Hey, we need to put this particular scheme or this play or this adjustment into it. And eventually, after one season of studying it where we just didn't get it done and seeing that, man, we had nothing. That was our identity. That going down the rabbit holes wasn't a smart thing. So I learned from that. When you see a team gashing somebody with something, definitely pay attention to it. But I think you got to say, how do we do this? How would we accomplish this with what we have, right? Rather than saying we need that scheme.
That's exactly right. So I think the biggest thing, the best feature with social media now is the fact you have access to it like we were talking about. So you can bookmark stuff, go back to it. But then I think the rabbit hole is you get caught up in plays that things are working for other teams that not necessarily what you do schematically. So I think that's where guys get off track a little bit and spend a lot of extra time on trying to force an issue or force a play that works for somebody else, but necessarily you may not have the personnel to do that. So it's not going to work for you. I like to find things in context of if counters our scheme that year, then I want to find different ways people run a counter. If we're an inside zone team, then let's find different wrinkles on that. How can you plug that scheme into what you do and really make that thing work? And I think that's one of the biggest things I'm looking for, is just trying to find how to attack that team with the concept that you use. And with the wrinkle, I mean, always wrinkle it, right? I mean, just kind of take the little wrinkle, and if you're a power team that year and you found a wrinkle, run it out of different personnel groups, formations. Here's the other thing I've learned too, that when you are watching that opponent team and they are getting gashed by that team, they have a fix-it period. So what you saw them just get gashed with the week before, you'd be sure that on whatever their next practice is, they're going to have a fix-it, and they're going to go through a walkthrough to fix that so it doesn't happen again. So if you come out and try to run the same play again to see if they fixed it, likely is that they have.
Yeah.
You better be able to move on to something else and don't hang your hat on that one play that gashed them, because they probably fixed it.
Exactly. Looking at how this ties to practice, again, getting in the midseason, we're settling in, we do what we do. How does practice evolve for you as you look at, you move through camp, maybe a bigger menu?
Yeah, one of the things during midseason, Coach Gundy has been doing a long time, so less is more for us. So we get into midseason, we're cutting back practice time, actually. So you better be spot on what you're putting in. And again, just not enough time to put a tons of different stuff in. So yeah, we're trying to cut back midseason, keep the guys fresh, keep their legs light, keep them feeling good. The biggest thing is obviously just health. Keep the guys fresh, keep the guys from getting banged up as much as possible. We've got, so especially in the offensive line, again, that's where everybody kind of struggles. I think everybody's kind of in the same boat. There's just not enough guys to go around, healthy guys, and guys to play the position, period. I mean, that's just, the game has changed, I think, in that area.
Yep. When you look at practicing and the things you're going to do in practice, that idea of, again, saving some of those hits for game day, making sure that we're putting them all out there. Do you adjust anything in terms of, I guess, maybe the amount of inside or some of the different things you do in individual? How are you looking at it from that perspective?
Yeah, we're going to cut down individual time. Usually we start the season out, we have 4 individuals. Usually by the time we get to mid-season, towards the late season, we will go 3 to 2 individuals, cut that back. Another thing that happens for us is we'll cut back reps. I think what makes Oklahoma State unique in the fact that I think we practice really hard. We hit really hard. And because Coach, he's old school. He still wants that element of toughness. You're going to win the game by you're not always going to be bigger, faster, stronger, but we can be tough-nosed and gritty and in the fourth quarter win ball games. So we don't want to lose that edge. And so we're still practicing really hard. We just kind of cut back the amount of reps that we're doing. So typically, like, we would do probably 30 to 35 reps, 40 reps in a team set. We're down to 22, 25, 30, something like that.
Coach, I appreciate you digging into this topic and sharing some ideas with us here that are useful mid-season. And we'll love to see what you guys do as the season continues on there. So good luck to you and the Cowboys the rest of the way.
Hey, thanks, Keith. Appreciate you having me on, man. Really do.
Here are winning edge takeaways from our conversation with Coach McEndoo. 1, adapt to personnel strengths. It's always important as you build that identity for your team to tailor your scheme to their strengths, especially as you start to get towards the midseason point. Coach McEndoo discussed how they adjusted their approach based on the strength of the running backs and transitioning from an inside zone team to a downhill gap team when their number 1 running back emerged. 2, remember, simplicity wins over complexity. I love sharing this takeaway again and again, and Coach McEndoo stressed the value of focusing on fewer, high-quality plays, noting that chasing too many different schemes can lead to inefficiency. He talked about prioritizing an A list of runs and complementing those with variations instead of spreading the team too thin across different concepts. And 3, I've been guilty of this one, but avoid rabbit holes. You have to resist that temptation to chase new ideas or plays that you see working for other teams. Coach advised against going down the rabbit holes that don't align with your identity, instead focusing on enhancing what your team is already good at. Thank you again for supporting the Coach and Coordinator podcast. As you know, we want to support coaches at all levels by providing insight into the mindset and the skill set of the best coaches. We also want to share the best tools and technology that they use, and you can find those in our 10% toolkit. The link is in the show notes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.